Welcome to the Useful Programming Tutorials channel. Today we're doing a tutorial on the basics of Git and GitHub. Git allows you to create repositories stored locally on your device and on the cloud so that you can access your files from anywhere. GitHub provides a website that allows you to access this through a GUI rather than using the command line. It is often used by programmers to store their files when they're working with a team, as it offers a great source of version control. This allows the team to work together, ensuring that there are no conflicts between files in the code, and that the code will always run correctly when they're looking to add new features. When you're wanting to use Git and GitHub, the first thing you need to do is download the Git version control software on your device. To do that, you'll need to go to git-smc.com/download/win if you're downloading it for Windows, or if you're not, then it'll be on that site but a slightly different URL. For most devices, you're going to want to download this 64-bit Git for Windows setup. Once the file has been downloaded, you need to open the installation window. For beginners, most of these additional steps are not going to be necessary. So here, you may want to add a desktop item for Git and Git bash, which is how we use the CMD in Git. You do not need to change any more options, as they're all good for beginners. So eventually you'll get to this install button, and to install GitHub on your device, simply click this, and then we can access the CMD or Git bash. So once you've correctly installed Git, you're going to want to open up the CMD, where we can start to create a new Git local repository. So what you want to do, navigate to whichever folder you want to add a new project to using the cd command. So for example, I can navigate to my desktop using cd desktop, and in here we can create a new folder using the make directory command and call it, for example, Git tutorial. You can call it whatever you want your project to be called, and then we can simply cd into this folder, and this is where we're going to start our Git repository. Want to use the start Git repository, we're going to want to use the git init command. So it should say initialize empty Git repository in the location of this folder. If you get an error saying that Git is not a recognized command, what you're going to want to do is in the bottom left, where you have type here to search, you're going to want to open Git bash. So once you open Git bash, it should look something like this. So as you can see here, I've done cd desktop to get into my desktop, and then we can do exactly the same thing. Before, create the new directory using the make dir command, cd into it, and then use git init to create a new repository. But for now, I'm going to go back to the CMD. So now that we have set up our repository, what we're going to want to do is add files to it, because otherwise there's not much point in having this repository. So I'm in here on my desktop folder, and I have this random txt file that says this is a text file. So what I want to do is just simply drag this into the Git tutorial folder, where you can see we have this .git folder here, which will have all the files added by when we did the git init command, and now we have this random text file. So now I want to go back to the CMD and do git add dot, or we can do git add random.txt. Git add random.txt will add this only a file with the name random.txt, whereas if you do git add dot, you will add all files that have not previously been saved in the repository. So this is useful if you've created a large scale project and want to add all the files. So if we run this command, we see we don't get any output. However, we can check the files we have added as they're stored in a staging area. And we can do this by using Git Status command, which will say on the branch master, which we'll talk about later, we haven't committed. Changes that we need to commit are this new file called random.txt, which for some reason is random.txt, a .txt. So now in order to actually commit these files, which is to save them in the repository, we're going to do git commit -m, and then in here we can add what we've actually changed. We can do added txt file. So this will change based off what you've added to your project. If you added, say, a new asset in a Unity project, you can say add new asset, asset name. So we simply add this. It'll say one file changed, one insertion, which is we've added a file. That's an insertion. You can also have deletion and modification. So now we have this local repository on our computer with a file in random.txt. Now, what we're going to do is find out how we can save this file on our remote repository on GitHub. So I've now made my way over to the GitHub website here. What you're going to want to do before you do this, you're going to need to make a GitHub account, which is pretty simple. You just need an email and a password to put in. Then what you're going to, once you've done that, you're going to want to come to this plus item, make a new repository. We can call this repository what we want, so I just call this Git tutorial. Description, it just allows people, if you're putting it public, to see what you've actually added. This readme file here is where you can write a description for your project. A git ignore is used when you're using certain templates. So you can ignore certain files such as Unity meta files, which you wouldn't need when we're creating a repository. If you're releasing a project as an actual software, you can add a license such as MIT license, say how people can use it, if they can use the project commercially or not, if they can modify it. But for our purposes, we just leave it on these default settings and we just create the repository here. So now you can see we're on this website here. This is telling us how to create a repository. See, we've done this, the git init command, we've committed it. And this is saying git branch m master. See, we don't actually need to do that because we are already on the master branch. What we do need to do is add a Git Remote, which is a remote repository stored on GitHub. Remote add, and then what most people call the remote origin, but you can call it anything. And then what you're going to want to do is just copy the URL of your repository into here, adding .git onto the end. So into this, we now have a remote called origin. So how do we add these files to our remote repository? Well, what we do git push. Push command allows us to add files to remote repositories. We also, later on, see that we can use the pull command to get these files from the repository to our local repository. But for this push command, what you need to do, git push -u origin, which is our remote, master, which is the branch that we are on. So you can see here, it's writing our objects, our text file, and our Git folder. And it says branch master set up to track remote branch master from origin. So the master branch of our local repository will now track the master branch from our remote repository. So if we now come back to this GitHub page and refresh, we should see that we have our text file here. This is a text file here. Then what we can actually do is edit this text file and say this is a new text. Well, that's not English. This is a new text file, and we can commit these changes. So this is a default message, update random.txt, and we can add an extended description if we want to, but for this purposes we don't need to. So here, what you can do, you can add this directly to our master branch, or we can create a new branch and start a pull request. In more complicated projects, you may want to start a new branch. This is for adding new features that may not correctly work, because if you add it to the master branch and it doesn't work, it may break the whole project. But seeing as we're just updating one text file, we can just commit this directly to our master branch. So now here, we'll see that this now says this is a new text file. Now, what we want to do is get this commit that we've added in our remote repository to our local repository. And we do this by, as we said before, issuing a pull request. So to do a pull request, we use git pull. And like here, where we did git push u origin master, we simply do the same without the -u. I'm replacing push with pull. So git pull origin master. Obviously, this will change based off the name that you added and the branch that you're on. So can you see here, it unpacks everything on our remote repository and fetches all the files. So you can see here, in our file we've had one addition and one deletion. This calls it an insertion, but it's an addition. Same thing. Because what we've done, we've removed some white space from the end of the file and added in the middle, new. So now we can, once we open the actual text file, it'll say this is a new text file. So in this very short tutorial, we have learned how to create a local repository on our device and how to upload files to a remote repository on GitHub. We've also learned how to take the files from this remote repository, say uploaded by teammates, and download them to your device. There are more advanced features in GitHub like pull requests and branches that will be covered in a later video if you wish to see it. If you want more tutorials like this and maybe a more advanced version, going into more advanced Git and GitHub dens to streamline your version control, make sure to like the video and comment down below what tutorials you would like to see on this channel. As you can see in our description, we do have a regular upload schedule, which is a Unity concepts tutorial series on Monday, which goes through basic concepts from movement to complicated concepts and really useful concepts like scriptable objects, which allow you to create your own custom objects that can be scripted into the game. On Wednesdays, we have a Python beginner to expert tutorial series that I will be doing, where we take you from not having Python on your computer to being able to do really advanced topics like meta classes, generators, decorators that will put you in a really good position to have a software engineering job. And on Fridays, we have a series that will take you through the whole process of game development by creating a simple 2D or 3D game. Be sure to tune in to those series and give them a like, and also comment what you'd like to see in future series